Hey everyone, welcome back. This video is a review for episode 2 of the show Them on Amazon Prime. I've already done a review video for episode 1, so if you haven't seen that one, make sure you go back on the channel and check it out. Let's get into episode 2. So it starts off with a flashback. I wasn't really sure if this was a flashback and what was going on, but we learned that it was in the past, back when they were in North Carolina, and we see a really sickly Henry, and he's having some type of issue. He throws pie angrily against the wall. We see a different Lucky as well, more of like a housewife type, and we see a young Ruby, and we learn that there's a baby Gracie somewhere, so it was back in the day. It gives us another perspective of how Black people were treated back then, because Henry describes, as he was enlisted in the army, the treatment of Black servicemen at that time, treated like less than with their fellow army men, not only them having to fight the Germans, but pretty much fighting, for themselves within the same army. They were experimented on with mustard gas and nerve gas, and it was just really sad to hear that he went through that. And again, it gives the viewers another perspective just to remind people or teach people about what happened to Black people back at that time. And we see that he has some type of problem. He's not the settled Henry that we knew. He was very disheveled, kind of sickly. Something was going on with him. I thought maybe he was suffering from PTSD, which was likely, and other things. We also see that Lucky kind of vows to help him through that. So that's a really good thing to know. And then we also see that he discovers his little dog Sergeant at that time, and that's how Sergeant became, a family member to the Emery family. Flash forward, we're now back to where episode 1 ended off. Now we're on where, episode 1 ended off with her flashing her gun in the street, threatening everyone to make sure they leave her family alone because they just found their dog dead. There's police that were called on the Emery family that were at the door banging, and I was scared, right? I was super scared because I already know how police treated Black people at that time. No differently than how they treat them today, but we get to see that perspective from at that time. And I just assumed that he was going to be hurt by the police, and he wasn't, thank God. Now, something really interesting happened. He ran quickly. Before he opened the door for the police, he ran quickly, and I knew he was going for the gun, but I thought he was going to hide it or get rid of it. He locked it up in a lockbox in plain sight. And I would like if you guys know, or maybe can infer why he did that instead of getting rid of it. I thought he was going to get rid of it, and he didn't. Also, we learned during that whole police interaction that there is a baby brother that disappeared, that died, something happened to him. Gracie's very young, and she knows about her baby brother. So it's interesting to see where that's going to come into play into the story, because I would like to learn about what happened to the baby brother. A police officer, picked up the picture, which is what brought him into the scene there. And Gracie really surprised me because she wasn't, I think all the family, of course, was scared of the police, but she wasn't scared when it came to her brother. And she became defiant and a different Gracie when it came to sticking up for this baby brother against the police. So I'm excited to see where that goes. We didn't get into this in episode 1's review, but I would like to touch on Midge, Betty's friend. Betty realized that Midge is not on the same page as her. And that's really important for the viewers to also realize. There's something special about Midge. She does not care as much as the other white neighbors do about getting the Emery family out of the neighborhood. Betty notices her best friend is not on her side. She's not as angry as everyone is. She's very suspicious of Midge, and so are we. I want to know, why doesn't Midge care as much as everyone else does? Why is Betty so suspicious of her best friend? And I just kind of predicted that maybe Midge might throw a wrench into the plot to take down the Emerys and move them out of the neighborhood. We later find out when Betty meets with Midge that she's moving, and she's also expecting, and something real creepy happens, something real sinister happens within Betty. She starts tapping on an egg or cutting an egg. I thought she was gonna stab up Midge. Anything can happen, right? These people are crazy. So, but she doesn't, of course, a little bit too early to be killing, right? So, I think right now, they want us to think that, oh, Midge doesn't care because she is moving and she's pregnant and she doesn't care. But I think if Midge was racist, like super racist, she would care. So I don't think the reason why she doesn't care is because she's leaving anyway. I think there's something else going on with Midge and her husband, and we're gonna find that out, hopefully. Let's talk about Henry. So Henry's an engineer. We learned that he was a serviceman back in the day. Now he's an engineer. So it's really good to see his arc, right? That he has grown into a really strong, astute man with a really prestigious job. Again, he's fighting against his white counterparts, but he does get a job at the whatever firm he works with. But he has a moment, he just went through a police encounter, the stress of his family, stress of holding up Lucky because she's not well right now. Dog died, everything, and he's distracted at work, and his boss calls him in. And I thought this was the one funny moment so far in the series because his boss is like, what's going on? I gave you a chance and you need to pick up the slack. And he was like, to be fair, listen, my dog died. Very interesting moment that all of a sudden the boss met him with humanity, right? Now, because they can relate, because there's this whole trope that white people care about their animals more than they care about humans' lives, specifically Black human lives. And that was shown in this show because immediately he humanized himself. He got touched because he remembered his own dog that passed away. And now he met Henry on the same level of sympathy and compassion. Very funny. I like that because, again, it's a thing that we think that, white people care about their dogs and care about animals a lot more than they care about Black people. So, funny. We also get to see Ruby, finally. We know that she's the older sister. She didn't really get much going on in the first episode, but she goes to school. We learn that it's an integrated school, so this is post-segregation times. And, I just immediately thought about Ruby Bridges and that the Little Rock Nine and having to go into an integrated school, but being heckled and being bullied and being spectated by white people, and kids could be completely cruel. So we saw the cruelty that Ruby faced, and it was really a heartbreaking moment, what she went through in school. I thought it was another interesting moment that the teacher gave Ruby a detention slip in order to leave the class and leave the harassment she was facing, and the detention slip said disrupting class, right? Just a reason to get her out of there. But again, it shows that Black people being punished, that they're the ones that have to experience a disruption in their life because of what they're facing, because of what we face, right? Normally you would get the disruptive kids, the kids that were making fun of her, the kids that were laughing and teasing her and making monkey sounds. They were the ones who were supposed to go to detention. But the teacher's compassion, she thought that the right thing to do was give Ruby a detention slip to get her out there. So again, another little innuendo or another little jab to show us, like another thing that we go through today and we see today that we see also back then. That was really interesting. And in the principal's office, we saw a little microaggression from a white girl saying that she was pretty for a Black girl. Again, yet another little mention of something that we go through, especially as Black women, microaggressions, being pretty for Black women, being complimented with the backhand. And so that's another little thing that the writers put in there to connect us to that story. So let's get back into the plot of supernaturalness, right, that we discussed in the last review. Whatever Gracie's connection, special connection to Lucky that Ruby doesn't have and seemingly Henry doesn't have yet, they go to the hardware store together and because they decide to fix the window that was down in the basement. And so they have a moment where Gracie gets lost in the store and Lucky goes to find her, and she warps into another alternate mental state where the hardware store somehow knows her name and knows what's going on with her. So again, now we're seeing that she's out of the house and still having that supernatural flash in, flashback, flash forward thing. So this is more than just the house. This is all we can see. This is more than just the house. Something's going on with Lucky, something's going on with Gracie, and somehow this supernatural presence is all connected. So again, following that plot point of what's happening at the Emery house, what's happening with Lucky, what's happening with Gracie. Henry also enters this alternate state for the first time as well. After he meets with his boss, he has a meltdown in the bathroom. He was supposed to go deliver some files. He has a meltdown in the bathroom, and soon after that meltdown, he bumps into someone in the hallway, and then he starts to have flashbacks and some type of meltdown moment where we kind of see the same type of meltdown flashback moment that Lucky had. So this is the first time we're seeing the supernatural presence affect Henry. And interestingly enough, as we see throughout the rest of the episode, Henry doesn't tell Lucky about this, and Lucky asks Gracie to also not tell Henry about what's going on. So I think eventually they're going to share that something's happening to them, but it's interesting that, you know, as husband and wife and as close as they are, they both kind of keep that to themselves. And at the end of this episode, it was a really confusing moment, but I realized it was a full circle moment, but I was trying to connect this circle. So Henry has such a day at work, doesn't want to tell his family. Ruby has such a day at school, doesn't want to tell her family. And I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't even get to, I forgot to cover the moment that Lucky has in the basement where she actually, for the first time, feels the presence of Miss Vera. Before, we thought maybe it was just Gracie and Miss Vera. They have something going on that no one else can see. But for the first time, Lucky does not see Miss Vera, but she feels Miss Vera. And she might also smell Miss Vera. And, you know, they're in the basement looking at that broken window, seeing where the dog died. They vow to fix it. But Gracie's like, listen, Miss Vera's here. And she's telling me things. You can't see her? Like, Mom, I can smell her. I can see her. Can you not see her? And Gracie, something special about Gracie. She's so smart. I think she knows that her mom knows what she's talking about, and she's trying to get her mom to see, like, listen, this lady's messing with me, and I know you can see her, just like focus. And for the first time, Lucky feels this presence of this woman, and they kind of try to have a vow to not talk about it with their dad, with the husband, but at the dinner table they do. So let's get back to this full circle moment. Something happens at the dinner table that Lucky serves him pie in a very eerie way. It's like she wasn't herself. And I couldn't see that switch, and I wasn't understanding why she had that switch. But she kind of switched into, I'm thinking maybe Miss Vera entered her body or something, because I'm like, why did she eerily feed him that slice of pie? And Henry had a triggering moment, like a PTSD moment, where the pie immediately, and it was kind of fractured too, which I think we're gonna get into the fracture, because as you see in the background, there's a fracture in the face of Lucky. And I'm trying to put this all together. Maybe this has something to do with the theme of the show, but this pie, this fractured pie, kind of triggered him. Now we see flashbacks of him throwing the pie back in the beginning, like we saw that flash of that man that he saw at work when he was having his meltdown moment. But we see the actual present day Henry fighting through that to get through that. And I guess that's like a theme of him persevering, pushing on, putting his past in the past, and being strong, and not running from who he is. And the family is watching him struggle through this pie, and so is Lucky, who fed it to him. And she's crying, and he's crying. And I'm like, but you just fed him the pie, like you did this on purpose. So it made me feel like she wasn't herself. Something was happening to her, that she didn't want to do this, but she did it. And there was two Luckys there. I don't know, can you guys explain that to me? Or did you guys see another perspective? At the end of it, he finished the pie, daughters are watching him, wife is watching him, they're both crying. I didn't know what was happening, but I thought that was a really profound moment, and I would like to understand what happened there. And that was an amazing way to close out the show. The very, very, very last scene is the gravesite of Lucky. So Henry buried Lucky in the front yard, or actually probably in the backyard, and you see that little patch where the gravesite is kind of start erupting with blood. It's a dark liquid, it's probably blood, but at the very ending scene, there's an eruption of blood, and I'm just like, okay, something is happening. I don't think the dog is gonna come back to life or anything, but that was the very, very last moment of the show, and that's how it closed out. So ultimately, it's building, and I love shows that build on the momentum without drawing it out. This is not a slow burn show. It starts with action right away, and I love that. So that's episode 2. Let me know how you felt about this episode. If you have any answers to the questions that I asked you guys, let me know. I really would like to know that moment, that last moment of the show, what was going on there at the dinner table. Leave comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, because episode 3 and episode 4 review will be up very soon. And thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys soon.